Ladies and gentlemen and listeners of the Randomness of Nothing podcast, this is your host, Rashad Woods. Today is a very special episode because it's a man who's conquered and still working at many different fields. And I linked to his Instagram page because I thought it was important, as it always is, to do research on people. And it was so inspiring. He says, make sure whatever you do something passionately. And it's a testament and a tantamount to the work that he does. That he's gone from filmmaking, screenwriting, and then pivoted to consumer packaged goods. If you want to hear this story today, Mr. Marcel Dios Herrera. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rashad, for having me. Thank you. So glad to be here, man. Thank you.
This is a blast because, it's not often that you actually hear from somebody that went from, screenwriting, filmmaking, and then, you went, I don't want to tell your story, but you made a nice pivot to the consumer packaged goods. And it was almost like the situation that unfolded that made you do that. Your life story is very interesting, and I want to have you tell your story, please.
I mean, I have my own qualms with my own story because it's so unique, and personally, it's always been a bit of a challenge to navigate because, yes, you're right, I have done quite a bit, and I think this all goes back to that saying, the master of none. Sort of
jack of all trades
ethos, the jack of all trades, master of none ethos. And here's my simple take to it before I get into kind of just sharing not even wisdom, it's just my story, but we live one life, and I think it's hard. Some of us have a very straight,
without question,
very easy pathway. We wake up, we know what we want to do. We want to be a doctor, we want to be an attorney, we want to be an astronaut. And other of us are what I call adventurers. It's not to say that the life of a doctor is less adventurous, because it's definitely adventurous, or the life of an attorney, or the life of an astronaut. But our life, on the other side, the two different sort of schools of thought on living, if you will, requires us to ask a lot of questions, and then through those questions you find out, oh, this is what I want to do. But in all honesty, I mean, my story, be as it may, is as interesting as you make it sound. It's really a story of just necessity. I knew from the moment I had any conscious ability of creativity in my body that I wanted to be a filmmaker. I mean, I knew from the, God, the first movie that I remember ever seeing on the silver screen was The Little Mermaid. And at that time I was like, oh my God, how is that happening? And then when I got older, not my mom's plans, but Alien was sort of this close into my world, the whole franchise. That was the doing of my uncle, my father's brother. And that kind of interest really intrigued me in, sort of the mystery of it all. And then along the way, I went to, when I graduated high school, I had written and done a few short films in high school, and written a screenplay. And I applied to all the film schools that I could get my hands into. And unfortunately, the only one that put me on a wait list was USC. And then when it came down to figuring out how to pay for it, we couldn't pay for it. It was just before FAFSA and all of the loans that now exist to pay for school. And, look, I mean, I think there was definitely like a moment of bitterness in my life, because I'm like, oh man,
so close.
I'm not going to get to do. So I'm not going to get to do. And I think that if I gotten in, I think I would have been probably not even talking to you. I probably would have been, who knows where, in the film industry. But, that's the life that, that was put before me. And like I said, in the early conversations, there's definitely moments of challenge with that life. I mean, I then found myself in pursuing a regular trajectory to education. I was a pre-med for 3 years. I worked at a hospital in Santa Barbara. And then the music industry came knocking on my door. And that's kind of when I was like, oh my God, maybe I need to do this
Yeah.
instead of doing this thing that I thought my mom and my dad and society wants
Isn't
me to
that
do.
funny though? And I hate to cut you off because like
No, no,
we struggle with that, right? In that when you come from and I don't want to diss anybody's background, but when you come from like the traditional like working background and people only see what's around them, it's very hard for somebody to break that mold and say, not so much for me. I just can't do that. Whether it's in arts, whether it's in creativity, whether it's something non-conventional, the quote unquote, factory down the street, so to speak, and then your uncle works there, your dad works there, your grandparents, and you're just like, dude, that's not for me. That's hard.
it is. It is very hard. I think I think I did it out of sheer rebellion too, because I kind of felt like, oh man, money is the thing that's going to prevent me from doing it. Well, let me circumvent. And look, at the time my head was still sort of, it was young, and I was just still trying to figure out life. And then I just found this amazing community. And mind you, I grew up playing music too. My mom um put me in a guitar class when I was 4 years old, and I had some real promise. I've been playing guitar now for 20 plus years because of that.
Mhm.
So it kind of served me to be in there, but I also was trying to fund myself because I've always wanted to tell the story through the lens of a film lens, and kind of have control of the story to instill people positive things. It's always been about positivity. I've never really been one to make anything that I do. It has a touch of inspiration to it,
Mhm.
but with a flair of something that's never been seen or done before.
Right.
Um, so fast forward to the CPG world, and right before, so I eventually I found myself back into film. I was starting to screenwrite.
Yeah.
I left the music industry. At this time, I had already done a lot of things for TV and film
That's
as a
amazing.
music composer,
That's amazing.
and then I moved to New York, and I remember telling my attorney at the time, "Hey, so I think I'm done with music composing." And they're like, "No, what are you doing?" And I mean, a lot of people around me were like, "Don't leave, don't do this to
Yeah.
yourself, because you're just like one or maybe two movies away from being your own lead composer." I said, "I know, but I just can't do this
Yeah.
anymore. I can't. I have to listen to my body."
Yeah.
And I there was a moment early on in that decision that I regretted it, because I went from having, I wouldn't say having it all, but having the freedom to do a lot of things, to then being stuck in New York by yourself
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
writing. But God, I mean, I have to tell you, I'm not, I'm a spiritual
Yeah.
person. I think everybody needs some kind of modality to
Without question.
go back to. I have a relationship with
Mhm.
God. So I think I give God a lot of credit for doing the things that He's done in my life. So when I moved and not knowing what to do, I had written this little screenplay
Mhm.
that then turned into a short film. And I met in New York a guy by the name of Demos. And Demos was a Greek investor, creative, musician.
Mhm.
I mean, he was a young, sort of like, he was a ladies' man. He's just partying all the time. Greeks party all the time. Um, and he had this, but there was also like this really softness to him. I don't like to do business with people that are too loud
Mhm.
or have too much to prove. um and there was a softness to him, and I sent him the script. He loved it. He said, "I have some people that I'm developing things with in the film industry. Can you make this into a short film? Here's 30 grand."
Oh wow.
And that was that. Yeah, I mean, I always tell that story. Like, I literally met you on the street. I could have ran away with your 30 grand
Dang.
at the time. And instead, I produced this short film, which opened a bunch of
Yeah.
amazing
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah.
Come to come to the WGA strike in
Oh man.
2021,
Wow.
and that became sort of like, oh my God, well, here I am again. I feel like I'm applying for film school again, and now I'm getting all of these doors closed. I'm just this close. And I'm like, you know what? Let me invest in something. So I was going to invest in a company called Laurels. Actually, she'll kill me for saying this, but um, Isabel Washington, the founder of that company, was a neighbor of
Oh,
mine,
wow.
and I found I through her and her experience of the CPG world, I found out about the community, and really, it's all about community for me. It's not about, yes, there's sort of an excitement to trying to return on investment and all of these fun things that go along with this business, but if the community doesn't call me, then I'm probably not going to do it. So there was a lot of camaraderie in
Yeah.
that business. There was a lot
Beautiful.
of help.
Beautiful.
And along the way, I began to have these like internal warfares within me. I'm like, oh my God, Marcel, calm your spirit. Don't do this. I was like, and the thing that I was trying to talk myself out of was, maybe you could do this yourself.
Right.
Maybe there's something that you can
Right.
offer. Maybe there's, and so I battled for about a month and a half, and I even had meetings with her marketing person in New York, and I was just really trying to like, where am I putting my money?
Right.
It wasn't a lot of money, but it was enough for me to to invest.
Cool.
And I had my son who was coming
Mhm.
up. um he was on his way, so I definitely needed to put something in the works. And then I just went back to my culture and my roots. I'm Peruvian Italian,
Yeah.
but mostly Peruvian.
Yeah.
The Italian is there as predominantly as the Peruvian, but it doesn't really matter. Peruvians sort of, they're very proud and loud about being
Yeah.
Peruvian. Um, but I grew up drinking this amazing natural antioxidant drink that I didn't know was antioxidant. I just had
Right.
it to quench my thirst,
Correct.
and it was a cheaper and more healthier version than, say, Pepsi or Coke.
Right.
So like, you knew there were financial troubles in the house when we made chicha morada, which is the traditional Peruvian
Hmm.
purple corn drink. And that's when you knew that maybe, dad couldn't buy,
Right.
Pepsi for
Right.
dinner,
So it's,
or juice, or what,
yeah.
Kern's juice was like the big hitter in our house,
Gotcha.
Kern's.
Gotcha.
Um, and I just had this idea of like, well, I know about this world now because of my, learning about it through
Hmm.
her. And I know about business. I've successfully launched businesses before. What can I do? And the only thing that's getting in my way is having to tell this person, sorry, the money that you were waiting for is not going to happen. And that was probably one of the hardest things for me to do. But it was also one of the most courageous things I could have done for my brand. And I remember taking her out to lunch and saying, look, I want you to taste something. So I brought a sample of the drink of what I envisioned. And she goes, wow, this is really good. What are you going to do with this? Well,
Yeah.
and I told her, and that was that. She was very understanding, but
Yeah.
also annoyed probably at me for a while. And she was actually very instrumental in helping me connect the dots and put myself out there with various different vendors that could help get
It's a
that ball
testament to that
rolling. And
individual's
so
character. It really is.
here we are.
And I would say too, not to cut you off. There's a certain amount of
No,
bravery,
no, no.
and I wouldn't know everybody's story, but people who have been successful have had to have those talks and conversations with other people, and
Yeah,
there may have been that moment where I'm disappointed, but I understand.
yeah, yeah,
It's one of those things where you're almost like, it's like in sports, like the backup quarterback. I like it here, but I'm a starter. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I'm a starter, and no disrespect to who's
yeah,
ever the name ahead of me, but my opportunity, I'm never going to get this chance again if I don't do what I need to do.
yeah, yeah. This is true. This is true. And that was, again, you kind of, you have to. Sometimes it's okay to say
Yeah,
no.
absolutely, absolutely.
Sometimes it's okay to say no.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what I found fascinating was, like your story and your career, that you took it, particularly with this brand, directly from your cultural roots, right? I thought that was very important. And
Yeah.
the inspiration from your grandmother, and, it's, first of all, the logo is really dope, right? Like the logo, I was like,
Thank you.
because I'm like, what is this all about? Like, I'm trying to like, and then when I saw, like, I went to your website and it's very colorful, it's very interactive. It has the Peruvian, people into it in it, and I'm just like, this is a really interactive and it shows like a lifestyle. And I thought it was really important too, because there's a, what you went into is a very crowded space. So you, by branding your brand into that specific niche when it comes to anti-inflammatory, Peruvian culture roots, something that's healthy, that's not going to be, the 21-year-old looking for a sugar high, all of those things matter when it comes to creating a lane, specifically, particularly in the consumer packaged goods. So can you tell me what it was like coming into that industry where, I don't want to say, another one, because again, it's such a crowded space.
Well, I've always found it fascinating to stay, of course, the authenticity boat. What I mean by that is, um, when you're authentic and your story is authentic and you're not just, and I'm not saying this about any particular brand. I think that when the story really resonates with people, and there's a connective tissue beyond the drink.
Right.
That's what I've found so far that has really kind of helped me stand apart from any other beverage company that's out there. But also, the highlight, or what I've been always calling the star of the show, is the purple corn.
Yeah.
And the other reason, and one of the main reasons I decided to forego investing in someone else's company and invest in my own, was because there is such an explosive Peruvian uproar, of our culture being shared here in the States. And people don't know this about Peruvian culture, but we're home to the original ceviche, for instance. Ceviche was a very Peruvian plate. We are home to the potato. There are thousands. Yeah, there are thousands of different types of potatoes that you can thank the Spanish conquistadors that took it out of Peru when they came to the Latin Americas to broaden their horizons. Quinoa is a Peruvian grain that has now been internationally made a viable commodity, and it's a favorite among people. I mean, from Russia all the way down to the tiptoe of South America.
Yeah.
So I looked at this not just as an opportunity, but also a chance to continue that education about what it's like to having Peruvian food. We're very close to the Japanese culture, for instance, because for 10 years, the president of Peru was a Japanese businessman.
I did not know that.
A lot of people don't know that. Right now, China is involved with Peru opening up, investing, and a lot of the reason why purple corn is starting to mobilize international waters is because China's involvement in launching one of the biggest seaports in Peru.
Okay.
And they struck up a deal with the Peruvians and said, "Look, I would really like to, do this and bring work to Peruvian workforce, but we also would like to, go and survey your land and take anything that we want with very little governance." And so now the Chinese are cultivating purple corn in China. It's amazing, but also it's not going to grow in the same way that the Peruvian corn grows, because where we are in the world.
It's tropical climates. There's nothing that could really imitate the environment. I'm far from a scientist, but there's something about the natural growing elements about certain, I don't want to say exotic, but fruits, that are domesticated fruits and vegetables that, it can lose its authenticity when it becomes mass produced. Right. And that's just how things happen. Having said all that, I think that I've always been fascinated how the world works and operates, right? And that's one of the reasons I did this show is that, in things that are very, very, painful for cultures, like Spanish
Yeah.
conquistadors. Obviously, we know about the history of the Spanish Inquisition of South America. You guys,
Oh
you're
yeah.
using this to retain your authentic culture. Like places that were traveled and ventured to, unfortunately, have a very bloody and sordid history. And there's a lot of lopsided deals that came from the extraction of natural
Yeah.
resources from certain places. We all know that history.
Yeah.
Anybody can read a book.
Yeah.
But having said all that, here you are in 2026 and said, hey, you know what? I'm going to use this part of my culture to make sure that the positivity of the Peruvian people comes to the masses, and the drinks that can now be be a global force for good, I think is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thank you for saying that. That was my question to you. What I wanted to learn more about what
Yeah,
the reason you started this
absolutely.
podcast, this wonderful T.R.O.N podcast.
It's
Yeah.
it's well. Here's the thing. It's just because I do martial arts, right? And so
Oh, wow.
thank you. I'm a black belt.
That's
Thank you.
amazing.
I'm a black belt in Tang Soo Do, which is Korean karate, right? So anybody who just does a martial art, you automatically become a student of how your martial arts started, right? A lot of these arts were started during world wars, during conflicts, during times of strife and painful periods in history. But I practice something that's inherently beautiful, right? Different types of styles, right? So but you have to learn about the history of what you're doing, right? So you're not just making a beverage. Like, you're not, hey, you're not some guy just on a board. I'm not dismissing people on boards, but you're like, this is really how I grew up and really drank in my kitchen, in my house, and it has a fond
Yeah.
memory of. And so it's authentically important to me. And so people
Yeah.
sometimes can lose sight of the fact that there's a large group of people out there that would enjoy your beverage. Like we get tunnel vision of all the people we think could enjoy what we drink or eat, when in fact you're giving people what they're looking for.
Yeah. That's it's just the voice and the perseverance of people is wonderful. I mean, the fact that you're studying martial arts. I mean, obviously, I can assume that you are not of Asian background,
I am
but
not, no.
um, but the fact that you studied it so passionately, it goes to show you how easy it is to connect with people. I mean, in the music world, my mom is Latinx, so she's like a black
Yeah,
Peruvian.
yeah,
Um, um, but I didn't grow up as a,
yeah,
Afro in any culture. It was very Peruvian, very
for sure.
Peruvian. And so when I went into the music business, all I worked with was with the urban side of the music
Yeah,
world. I mean, I hung out with like Tyrese
that's
Gibson
awesome.
on a regular, or I would hang out with like uh,
Yeah,
rappers and just everybody that was in that
yeah.
world, because I guess there
You
was some
gravitated.
kind of
Yeah,
like connective tissue.
yeah,
But I learned so much about that, of what it means to be a black
yeah,
man in
right.
America, and it opened my eyes to not only continuously appreciating that, but also to broaden my horizons in
Yeah,
food, or even just, I mean,
yeah.
I can't tell you how much Southern amazing food I've had since I came to knowledge about Southern food. So that's the connective tissue that we all share. I think
Beautiful.
food and beverage has such an amazing power,
Yeah,
um, and also the arts,
absolutely.
right? The arts, like martial
For
arts,
sure.
other types of arts. So, um, man, what a wonderful world we're living in.
People don't exactly sit around and say, let's enjoy this crappy food and terrible beverage, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's just call it
Yeah,
for what it is. Like, if you're going to, consume, watch a movie, drink, do all these sort of good things, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be around people you enjoy, things you like to drink and eat, and things that bring you joy. And so, like, those are the things that, and that's one of the reasons why I think, I never would have had a chance to talk to somebody like yourself. I never would have heard about
mm,
Kulli purple drink from a Peruvian roots. So for my own personal curiosity, I did this show because I watch documentaries. You said you're a film guy, and so when you say do something passionately, I always think of the movie Collateral with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx. He's in that cab and he's in the back seat, and then he basically said, "Someday my dream may come." And he's talking to Jamie Foxx. He's like, you were never going to do it anyway. One day you were old. Basically, he summarized Jamie Foxx driving the cab, and he said, you were going to start something, but you never were going to do it. How long you been saying you were going to start that limousine company? You're lying to me and you're lying to yourself. I'm summarizing it for people who
yeah,
haven't seen the movie. And in that moment,
yeah,
it wasn't just him talking to Jamie Foxx. It was him talking to the audience of people who sat back and said, you better pursue something, but you better pursue something that's in
Yeah.
your heart. Even if I'm a hitman assassin, I'm enjoying my line of work. And you're just like, wow, that line always stuck out to me, you know.
That's a powerful movie.
It's a powerful
In fact,
movie.
I need to go back and watch it again.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's one of my favorites.
that movie broke a lot of molds. That was, I think, the first digitally
It
shot movie.
was, yes, with Michael Mann, right? Nobody had ever seen that type of. And then when the coyote walked across the street, you know, in the middle of LA,
Yeah.
you're like, what is this symbolizing, right? But it was
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember when that was Chris Cornell singing that song from Audio Slave at the time. So you know,
Yeah, a lot of great things in that movie. Man, yeah, look, it's I think that I'm just curious that because you interview a lot of people, what is sort of the temperature around AI, or what are
I
you?
think people are like, you know, I think the genie's out of the bottle. I think people don't understand. There's two different sides to this equation. People love to utilize it, but they hate knowing that that's possibly their replacement, right? It's great for your personal life, right? Because now, AI was spell checking on your computer, 30 years ago, but I think that, when
Yeah.
it comes to like, you're in the entertainment industry, like songwriting is supposed to be authentic. It's supposed to be a helper of like a hook or maybe like a stanza, not to write the entire song, but I think one thing that AI has taught people is you better have, transferable skills, and you better step your game up. The genie's out of the.
Mhm.
I will say this though, companies have a tend to overinvest, and then they always course correct in the background, right? So I think that there's going to be a case where everybody's all in, and then they're going to realize that there's going to need to be a pullback of some sorts, right? It's almost like the automated checkout. You utilize automated checkout till there's a line of 75 people, and then you're
Right.
pissed.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you're in New York
Oh,
on a Wednesday in the middle of Whole Foods, and I've had to do that. It's horrible. I mean, I felt like, man, I'm back in California. I'm back on the Viper at Magic Mountain. Got to get on the Viper roller
all I
coaster.
asked for
I'm
was
like,
bread and meat, and then it becomes like an hour ordeal, right? I like literally, right? Like, and you're just like, seriously, like
yeah,
and then you're almost
yeah,
at the point where it whatever was joyful about that experience tanked really fast. So I think that,
yeah,
there can be a force for good. I also think that it's allowing people. I was talking to a previous guest. His name slips me at the moment, but people are going to find out that once things are accelerating in this direction, they have a lot more of that free time that they said they never had. And in that moment, they're going to have to create, a Kulli Purple. They're going to have to start a podcast. There's a million podcasts you could have went on, but for some reason you and I connected because it was about the human connection that I thought that we could share and the experience that we had together. That's also, you have to sell yourself in this era at this point, because
yeah,
everything is very, very copyable and malleable and, very quickly.
yeah, yeah. It's true. We're we're entering that phase, and people are going to start to, well, if he's doing that, maybe I could do it better.
Yep.
Maybe I could do it this
Yep.
way. And that's that's the difference. I mean, I think we're excited about where we're headed as a company.
Mm-hmm.
What I forgot to mention is that the same man that invested in my filming career years later is the same man that I co-founded the
I
company
saw
with,
that on your website. I'm
Demos.
glad you do.
So Demos and I were I've always been, I think we were always destined to work and build businesses together, um and we're not done with Hollywood.
Yeah.
We're not done. No, we're not
I
done.
would hope not. I
It's
would hope not.
no. In fact, can't share much, but there are things that are being developed right now in my company on my entertainment side that are going to help tell this story even better than the story of Kulli
Yeah.
and the Peruvianness,
Right.
that I don't think people are aware about it, and I'm so excited to share.
Sure.
So listen, Rashad, I think we should definitely stay connected.
I think
I
so.
would love to continue to learn from you, and
Yeah.
I always say that one of my dear friends and someone I look up as a mentor in life. He's always been very modest in his way of living, carrying himself in modestly. His rock star side comes out when he needs
Yeah.
to flex it, but otherwise he's very modest and very,
Beautiful.
very just kind. Um, and Brad always has always instilled in me, always be comfortable being the stupidest person in the
100%.
room. It's a harsh way of looking at it. It's a
150%.
harsh way of looking at it.
150. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And
Absolutely.
I I can't tell you how many founders I've met along my journey that both from the CPG and the music. I mean, look, sometimes being arrogant used to work, but I think people are starting to wake up and be like, no, I don't need another Kanye. I don't need
Yeah.
another Steve
Yeah.
Jobs. I mean, I love Steve
Yeah.
Jobs.
He was tough.
I think what he's accomplished is amazing,
He was
but
tough.
he was a bit of a jerk. I mean, whatever. The Apple people can hate me, but
He was tough.
I think that the cat is out of the bag, and we're now saying no, humble pie your way through life, because you just never know who you're going to run into that could potentially be that
Oh
moment
yeah.
that your journey could go upward or can really go downward,
Oh, for
and
sure.
just humble
Yeah,
pie.
exactly. And and obviously, I'm very respectful of your time, and I know that you're going to do great things. This is the part where we do the shameless
Oh,
plug, and we tell you, and you get a chance to do the time where you're going to say exactly where you can find your beverage, Kulli Purple, and if and where how it's going to be. And hopefully it's in Michigan. If you ever need somebody in Michigan, if you want to send me samples and be able to, whatever you need, I would love my audience to be able to enjoy the things that the Peruvian culture. There's not much in Michigan here. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry forever who I offended, but I don't know much around here. But again, I don't know what I don't know.
sure. Yeah, no, I mean, Drink Cooley is available on our
Mhm.
website. We have all the, abilities to send you Cooley right now. Or if you are in Southern California, we're opening up stores with Bristol
Mhm.
Farms. We are currently at Lassen's and a few other small doors here, smaller grocery chains here in LA,
Mhm.
and making our way through getting national distribution. So we're in early talks with KE about joining some of their programs so that I can be able to distribute to
Okay,
Michigan and even beyond that. So but I would love to send you
that'd be
samples.
awesome, dude.
And yeah, I mean, look, again, the one of the more exciting things about a beverage company is coming up with other SKUs or other flavors of that
Yeah.
beverage. We have some really exciting things that are being developed right
Mhm.
now, and that I'm not going to get
Oh,
too
that's
much
so
into,
nice.
but
Yeah.
I have I mean, I've tasted this stuff, and I'm just like, when can this go on the shelves? Obviously, you kind of have to respect the trajectory of the business. It's got to wait a little longer, but I'm excited, needless to say, to share it with the rest of the world. So
Beautiful. And and I'll just say this: that the one thing that I find beautiful is that being able to do this show, a beverage can learn about your culture. Like something so simple as meat. Like it's because like literally you look at the back of it and you're like, what does that mean? You look up the name of it and you're like, oh, who created that? And that's kind of how this show kind of organically came. I'd always grab the back of a package or something that I use, just kid like, man, where'd this come from? Who made this? And you'll find out people like yourself are very forthcoming about your stories and your histories, right? Because that's how people get authentically story made, because they came from the guy who has Peruvian roots. It came from the person that started something in their kitchen. And that's really why I made this show, because I think curiosity and fascination knows no zip code, postal code, country, or language. People just want to know about
yeah,
fascinating things. And and
yeah,
what I found out is once it's authentic to your point and you're sincere about your approach, I get a chance to talk to people like you, because you could sure be talking to somebody
yeah.
else or doing something else. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you, Rashada. Thank you. Appreciate that. Um, yeah, I'm here to, like I said, if there's anyone that is interested in launching a CPG business, I'm an open book. I can share all the knowledge I've earned or have
And
learned
been burned.
along the way. I say earn. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't. The last thing I'll say, if you are listening and you do want to launch a CPG business, do it, but always do some reconnaissance on the people that you work with. I've been very lucky to dodge some very ugly bullets in this business so far that could have cost me essentially my runway.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just learn about people's business and their intent, and you're like, oh my God, there's been some legal battles with this company. No, I'll see you later. So, always learning about the people that you're doing business with too is really helpful.
Unfortunately, not
just because they can.
Unfortunately, not everybody's as sincere as you or forthcoming as you. You really have to do your homework.
Well, the world's full of them, but we just have to. Sometimes if it's too good to be true, it's because it is.
And there's beauty in the struggle. It truly is.
There is. Fall. Good. I received a lot of breadcrumbs along the way, and I maybe made some too monumental mistakes, but it wasn't costly.
Yeah.
It was more of an embarrassing moment. And I'm just glad for that. I mean, will I make more mistakes? Absolutely. Right. So I just hope that I have the appropriate band-aids to put on my knees when I do that.
Exactly. Hey man, Windows made Windows ME, and we all know how disastrous.
Yeah.
To your point, it's all about the journey, not about the hiccups along the way. So thank you very much, Marcel Dios Herrera.
Yeah.
Cannot wait to get that.
Rashad. Oh my God. Thank you so much for the kind words. And again, I'm just here to serve. So whenever you want to come back or we want to do this again, let's do it. And be sure to send me your information so that I can get you some Kulli and continue on the way.
Can't wait. Appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
It was a blast, man. Appreciate you.